afternoon, everybody. It is a great pleasure and also a distinct honor to be here today. First of all, I want to express my deepest gratitude for this kind invitation of Nexus and, of course, of its founder, Kirk Laughlin, to address such a prominent audience. Since its origin 6 years ago, this forum has been at the forefront in promoting the exchange of enlightening ideas among key stakeholders of the services sector. I hope mine will be up to such tradition. I also thank the support and assistance of CINDE, the Foreign Direct Investment Promotion Agency of Costa Rica, which has been responsible for presenting the country to investors for more than 30 years in high-value sectors such as corporate services. Today, Andrea is here. She is the Director of Communications and Corporate Relations of CINDE. He has been accompanying me in this forum, and she will be willing to address any more specific questions and will share some information with all of you who can be interested in it. This year, Nexus called us to reimagining the Americas. I can't think of a more appropriate title for this year's forum. The nations of the Americas, either in the south or in the north of the hemisphere, are going through very challenging times, which will test the strength of our convictions and the soundness of the relations that have been forged among us for many years. In Latin America, our countries experienced more than 2 decades of political, economic, and social progress. In the late 80s, a wave of democratization swept the region, bringing political stability and the respect for the rule of law. Regarding the economy, the 1990s and the first decade of this century saw the consolidation of macroeconomic and fiscal responsibility in most of our nations. A region infamous for its booms and busts enjoyed considerable economic stability, even weathering the worst economic effects of the 2008 financial crisis. The economic success translated into social achievements. Between 2002 and 2012, poverty in the region fell from 44% to 29%. Unemployment was reduced by 35%, and the middle class expanded from 22 to 34% of the population. However, after these gold decades, the wheels seem to be turning. For the last 3 years, optimism and euphoria have transformed into caution and concern. Some countries are now struggling to avoid negative growth rates, while others are facing modest to minimal growth. Prices for primary goods have dropped. Demand from emerging markets, particularly from China, has gone down. The sluggish economic recovery of Europe and the United States has affected our economies, while external financing conditions are scarce and expensive. This economic turndown found large segments of the population that are still vulnerable to falling back into poverty in the event of a prolonged economic recession. Finally, the combination of these economic and social vicissitudes is yielding scenarios of great public pressure on the political elites that will test the democratic foundation of some of our nations. This is not to say that all countries in the region face the same odds. Despite the many challenges we share, some Latin American nations have advanced considerably in the last couple of decades, addressing the structural factors that have historically hindered our ability to reach sustained economic growth and ensure stable social and political climates. Based on what some nations are doing, we can state that Latin America is a successful nearshore region. At least you can see in this slide 9 to 10 countries which are having success as part of the Nearshore platform in Latin America. I am proud to say that Costa Rica is one of the most successful examples of nearshore. A tiny country of just 50,000 square kilometers and 4.7 million inhabitants, whose evolution and transformations in the services sector demonstrates that development is not about the size of a nation, not about the natural wealth a country possesses, a small and unarmed democracy that confirms that development is all about talent. Dear friends, you just saw a video that presents what Costa Rica is today. As with our standard of a natural and tourist destination, we proudly wave a history of economic growth, human development, and political stability. Our commitment to democracy, the rule of law, and human development are not fruits of a fad. They are the consequence of explicit choices made throughout our life as a nation. No one forced us to declare and legislate that primary education should be free and universal more than 140 years ago, before all Latin America, before England, before nearly every state in this very country, or to invest 7% of our GDP in financing a public education system that covers 90% of our student population and that has achieved gender parity, eliminating any discrimination between boys and girls in the access to education. No one forced us to create in 1940 a public health care and social security system underpinned by values of solidarity, a system that explains why Costa Rica now has the same life expectancy as the United States, and why we achieved human development standards similar to those of the developed world. No one forced us to decide in 1948 that we wanted to be the first country in the world without an army, that we refused to squander our resources on fighting imaginary wars, that we were unwilling to invest even 1 cent on military gear when we could investing in building a school for our children. A brave decision that brought us peace and stability. No one forced us to take on the task of protecting our prodigious biodiversity in a nearly 4-year-long effort that today places almost a third of our territory under some form of environmental protection regime. A policy decision that, along with other financial and fiscal instruments, explain our green development model, which produces 100% of the electrical energy we consume from renewable sources. No one forced us to devote well over a century to nurturing the institutions that currently make Costa Rica's democracy the most stable in the developing world. However, having achieved these development goals was not enough for us. We also realized that a country of our size should look for opportunities beyond our borders, that the best way to multiply that which nature and history had gifted us with involved our embracing integration and globalization without any reservation. Therefore, in the decade of 1980, we successfully moved to complement our development strategy by relying on world markets and promoting a solid foreign investment and trade platform. Since then, Costa Rica has become the gateway to the Americas. It grants foreign investment companies preferential access to markets in the United States, Canada, Europe, Peru, Colombia, Mexico, and China, among others, representing 2.5 billion people and 60% of the global GDP. More than 92% of our export of goods are covered by free trade agreements. In this slide, you can see the countries and regions with which we have signed any kind of trade agreement. The results of this strategy are more than eloquent. Costa Rica evolved in a matter of decades from an agricultural economy reliant on the export of coffee and bananas to a diversified and thriving economy whose leading export in 2015 was medical devices. Today, we export more than 4,300 products and services to more than 150 destinations. In this slide, you can see how the industry and services sector have surpassed the agricultural sector. Another result, as also you can see in this slide, was the steady growth of foreign direct investment. FDI grew at an annually average rate of 12% since 2003. In 2014, FDI represented 4% of our GDP, and its inflows have financed more than 96% of the current account deficit in this last decade. The opening of our economy resulted in a dramatic shift from labor-intensive to knowledge-intensive products. Multinational and global corporations have been able to create a platform in Costa Rica to deliver high-value added services and export high-tech products. In the midst of this very positive evolution, a key player emerged, expediting the transformation of our productive sector. This is the corporate services sector. Today, it is one of the most important motors of growth and a driving force behind the transformation of our economy towards a knowledge-based one. The services sector shows the most outstanding growth. Exports of information technology services, plus other business services accounted for 6.2% of the GDP in 2014. The dynamism of this sector is also evident in the growing number of companies we host and the number of jobs they generate. This slide illustrates the impressive growth of the services sector in my country in terms of employment and in terms of the number of companies. So while in 2000 only 6 companies were operating in Costa Rica, today 139 companies are already established. These 139 companies employ about 50,000 people, whereas 12 years ago the sector could barely surpass 1,000 employees. The services sector experienced an amazing diversification itself. It went from just 2 kinds of activities, basically contact centers and shared services, to a hub with more than 75 different high innovation services, such as shared services and back offices, digital technologies, engineering and design, entertainment and media, regional offices, and other different kind of services. Since our people have also achieved an understanding, mastering level of a second language, we are offering more than 75 types of services in 15 languages, mainly English, French, and Portuguese. Our services cluster now encompass, as you can see on this slide, global leading industry that have been able to grow and successfully evolve in the value chain of their services. Let me mention 2 specific examples that illustrate what I'm talking about. IBM has a large operation in Costa Rica. Since its arrival in 2004, it has kept growing and evolving. To date, their payroll accounts for about 2,000 people that develop in ITO and BPO operations. More than 8,000 services are provided by IBM from Costa Rica in its Global Services Delivery Center and its Shared Services Center in 4 languages, serving more than 30 companies, many of them being Fortune 500. Intel is perhaps the best known transformation story in Costa Rica. Intel decided to move its manufacturing operations from Costa Rica to another country in 2014, following their overall strategy of seeking a closer relationship with its suppliers. In its place, it decided to install its first mega laboratory in the world, where the products are tested before reaching the world market. This mega lab joined the Consolidated Services Center for the Americas, which has been operating in Costa Rica since December 2014. More recently, the corporation selected our country for the development of its client computer group and its research and development center for designing, prototyping, testing, and validating of IC and software solutions. Today, Intel's payroll is even greater than that of their manufacturing operation. Those two cases exemplify how we are becoming a hub for strategic services with higher value added. You may wonder, how have we managed to get here in such a short period of time? Certainly, all the factors that make part of our value proposal as a country have played a role in defining Costa Rica's success. But the most decisive one is the talent of our people. The most visionary decision we made as a nation was to invest in the education of the Costa Rican citizens. When we decided to pursue a path towards a prosperous and sustainable development led by innovation, science, and technology, we also envision leading this way through our continued focus on education. There has been a long-time commitment supported by a national consensus, a priority for all the governments, no matter their political differences. In order to keep the pace with the rapid increase of FDI, my administration continued to strengthen our social policies and our competitiveness environment. We were able to achieve significant milestones such as structuring an ambitious investment plan for infrastructure, developing one of the most important container terminals in the Caribbean, modernizing the telecom sector, which is very critical to the services you provide, and streamlining regulatory procedures. We also continue integrating Costa Rica into the world economy. We decided to actively engage in the efforts to join Mexico, Chile, Colombia, and Peru as the fifth member of the Pacific Alliance, the most ambitious and pragmatic sub-regional initiative in the Americas. As the first formal invitee in a long and growing list of observer countries, Costa Rica is awaiting negotiations that will lead us to a full participation in the Pacific Alliance. We also began a systematic approach to the OECD with the aim of becoming a member of the organization. We are currently in the accession process based on an action plan to move towards higher standards and best practices in all areas of public policy, strengthening the rule of law, promoting economic growth, enhancing the investment climate, promoting competitiveness, all with the view of improving the well-being of our citizens. But true to our traditions and values, my government embraced education as one of our highest priorities. We prioritize the expanding of the high school technical education. We work to improve and enhance the capacity of universities to respond to the private sector needs and priorities. In order to increase engineering specializations and enrollment quotas, more research centers, and better lab infrastructure. We also focus our efforts on innovation and entrepreneurship by creating a scholarship fund so as to grant master's and PhD scholarships in careers of high demand and interest to the industry. All of these efforts are paying off. According to recent data published by the World Economic Forum in its Global Competitiveness Report, Among the Latin American countries, Costa Rica ranks the highest in training and higher educations, the highest in business sophistication, the highest in innovation, and the second in enabling trade. Finally, I want to underline an aspect that has also made part of our value proposal. This aspect has to do with the way we Costa Ricans are. We are people who love people. We understand the importance of coming together with those who share our aspirations to bring about common goals. The very direct involvement of government officials in listening to the needs of the business community is an element that has distinguished the way we work. I was involved personally in all the initiatives that could strengthen high-value operations in the company. But the same had occurred in previous administration, and also it is happening with the new government. The same is also happening with the universities, which work close to the corporate sector to improve the existing curricula and to provide it with the best human resources they can. Dear friends, we are conscious of the challenges that lie ahead, but at the same time, we are convinced that Costa Rica has the fundamentals requirements for excelling in the region and in the world. A stable political system based on the respect for the rule of law, sound economic policies, an ideal geographical position, a strong trade and investment platform, and most than all, clever and innovative people. We truly believe that by keeping our commitment to the values that supported the building of our nation, Costa Rica is on the right path to successful development. It is our ambition to move from made in Costa Rica to created in Costa Rica. We want to keep building a good future, and we know our friendship and alliance with the United States is a key to that future. We will seek even more solid and closer ties with this country, its businesses community, and its people in the years to come. I just hope that in the United States can also prevail a vision about the nations of the Americas as children of a common history, that our hemisphere can be envisioned not as a threat, but as an enormous opportunity, better to project the values of freedom, justice, and democracy that have made this nation so special. I just hope that we can hear in the months to follow less about walls and barriers and more about opportunities and trade. Costa Rica embodies the very spirit of this conference. It is all about talent. However, in order to keep promoting our talent as the main driving force of our development, we must be able to rely on the opportunities that free markets bring. Markets that are willing to buy and consume the goods and services we produce. Markets that will let us compete. For countries like Costa Rica, there are only two choices. Either we are given the opportunity to export what the talent of our peoples produces, or we'll end up exporting the people themselves. My friends, I want to conclude inviting you to visit our country, to lie on our sandy beaches and to explore our magnificent rainforests. But I also want to invite all of you to take part in this wonderful opportunity called Costa Rica and experience what is essential about us. A country where companies like the ones you represent today will find certainty that they are walking along the path of progress and innovation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Yeah, please. Yeah. Excellent thoughts. Really appreciate it, Madam President. Very interesting. I was particularly struck by the way in which you positioned that last statement of we share a common heritage or common ancestry in the Americas. I think that's very, very powerful idea. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on the maybe responsibility or leadership the United States has regarding this sort of shared ideal or shared vision.
As I mentioned in my talk, we are children of a common history. It is impossible to imagine a successful future for the United States without counting on the Latin American countries, and also it is the same on reverse. Certainly, the relationship between the United States and Latin America is even more critical for the nations in the northern part of Latin America, Mexico, Central America, and some of the Caribbean countries are very dependent on the trade inflows, the investment inflows from the United States. But also, as we can see, according to the figures, we are also very critical for example, the investors of the United States. We do not only offer what it is very common to hear, sometimes cheaper labor force, but it is also has to do with the quality of our labor force. Our relationship is not only based on competing based on cheaper resources. We are very concerned also about protecting our environment. In fact, the trade agreements we have negotiated with the United States, they are very demanding in terms of trying to enforce the correct application of labor laws in our countries to the protection of environment. So, you know, it's a relationship in which every nation is winning. Mm-hmm. And so what we hope, because I cannot express my concern when I listen to most of the candidates during this political campaign, because they are very negative, both from mm-hmm. the Democratic and Republican Party. They are very negative about trade agreements. And so we have already signed most of the agreements, but we need to continue investing in the facilitating of trade sure. among the different nations.
Well said, well said. In regard to this issue of Latin America's perception among business investors in the United States, Costa Rica doesn't really suffer from this problem as much as other countries, but there's this common thread of reactive, sort of knee-jerk reaction of Latin America being unsafe, or there's a kind of all kinds of negativity around that issue. How, what can be done about that? Do you think the business investors are looking at the right data? Have you wrestled with that at all in your former presidency?
Well, yes, safety is a big issue, and mostly for also the northern part of Latin America. We are having in the North and Central America the countries with the highest homicide rate of the world. Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala are going through a very difficult situation in terms of violence or violent crime. Also, Mexico is experiencing a very unprecedented way of violence. But also Colombia experienced that for almost 50 years. And what we learned from the experience of Colombia is that if you have the right policies and you have the right leadership, you can be able to overcome those kind of scenarios. And I am optimistic about the future of those countries that are going through this very dramatic situation. In the case of Mexico, I can testify, because I am very close to some of those policies, I can testify that they have been able to neutralize most of the more dangerous lords of the organized crimes and the narcotic gangs. Of course, it won't happen from one day to another. It takes time, but they are moving ahead, that's my impression. And in the case of Central America, they are also starting to put a more sound platform with the cooperation of the United States. And I hope they will be able to overcome the situation. Now, we need to invest more in social opportunities for the young people mostly. We need to strengthen the rule of law in those countries to fight impunity. We have to also invest in more professional police bodies. And finally, we have to open a very, very sincere dialogue, very frank dialogue with the United States concerning the drug policy in the region, because what it is true is that the policy that we implemented for the last 3 decades was not the response. It was very costly in terms of human lives, in terms of the resources we invested, and the results were very, very poor. And so now that is happening, and I don't know what will happen with the new government, but at least with the Obama administration, we have been able to open a dialogue to explore different scenarios in the fighting of the drug cartels.
Another really interesting policy that virtually all the countries present here, and certainly with Costa Rica, have adopted over the many years is this idea of attracting global services companies and basically giving them tremendous incentives, tax breaks, lots of benefits to coming to a country. The potential problem with that is it could be too much of a good thing, because there, one could argue that that's a lack of revenue to support infrastructure and services. I mean, let's be honest, those services companies still, when there's a fire, they have to call the fire department. When there's roads, they have to be paved. They're not necessarily really paying for that. I mean, there's payroll taxes and things, but it's a debate that's beginning to evolve, and let's be honest, a lot of these countries, the revenues and the tax collection system is not necessarily all that evolved in certain situations. So what has to give? And I'd love to hear your thoughts on, is there an equitable solution out there for this kind of thing?
Well, I can speak for Costa Rica, and yes, we have some tax breaks for foreign investors. All of those rules are according to the World Trade Organization, so we are competing according to the rules. And they basically are about exceptions on the payment of some income taxes, some local government taxes. And that is important, of course, for the foreign investors. But let me tell you 2 things about your question. First, you can have tax breaks, and that is going to be part of your value proposal in order to attract foreign direct investment. But that is not the most important incentive for a foreign investors. They are also looking for other kind of aspects, such as political stability, very clear rules. The legal framework is very important. The kind of treaties that you have signed. It is also very important the quality of the resources they will be able to get in the country. So in our case, for example, when we have talked to some of our investors in Costa Rica, it is interesting to know that tax breaks was not the most important factor that affected the decision. The most important factor was the quality of our people.
Right.
That is something. And the second reflection is that although you probably won't be collecting as much as taxes as you would like, foreign direct investment compensates with other kind of investment that they make in the country. For example, they impact very positively in innovation. technological innovation, managerial innovation. They also create employment, of course, and employment of very good quality in the case of Costa Rica. So they incentivize a kind of virtuous cycle, pushing us to continue investing for a better quality education. And of course, they help with the growth of our economy. So when you put in the balance,
Right.
what is better, for me, we are taking the right decisions.
Okay, excellent, excellent. I would love to have all of you think of a good question or two. I'm going to ask one more question, and then we'll have a mic runner. So think up a good question out there. One of the other topics I think, I actually was fortunate enough to live in Costa Rica with my family up until the end of last summer. And I honestly was really struck with the quality and attractiveness of the Caribbean coast of your country. There's something really special about the
Beautiful.
people,
It's
about
beautiful.
the environment, and it's got a very unique history. Many folks are native English speakers or
Right.
very close to native English speakers. Not too many people know that. So at the same time, though, but when people think, a global service community thinks about Costa Rica, it's all about, virtually all about San Jose. So what can be done to really foster that? I've met many people from Limon who are in San Jose who would be happy to go back to Limon and work there. So,
Yes.
so what's your thought?
Well, that is a very, very, very good question because we are already doing what probably we should have done before. And what is that? We are investing in infrastructure because the problem with the Caribbean is that the infrastructure they have is not good.
Right.
The roads, the ports, even the broadband width and the internet services, they were very poor. So during the previous two administrations, we decided to put a lot of money in order to build what we have called the Northern Caribbean corridor. Is a set of streets that will connect the whole region in order to facilitate the transportation of goods. Also, we invested, probably the most important investment in the last years in Costa Rica, to start building, and they already started, to start building what is going to be probably the largest port in the Caribbean region. We are preparing ourselves for the expansion of the Panama Canal with this port. And also, something what is important for Costa Rica and of course for Limon, we decided to install in Limon one of the best universities that we have in Costa Rica. They emphasize on the technology and scientific education, and so they already opened a location in Limon. And I think that with all of these decisions and all of these actions, Limon will be able to show the strengths that its people have. And they will be able to compete, they will be able to offer also interesting platforms for some of the investors to go to the Caribbean. So you will be able, not only to go there to make business, but also to enjoy our beautiful beaches in the Caribbean coast.
So BPO providers, let's all go down to Limon sometime soon and we'll take a look. Who would like to ask a question? We got one right here.
Here we have one.
Yes, thank you very much for those very informative remarks. It was very enlightening.
Thank you.
You had just mentioned earlier about management innovations that are being developed there that you're saying. Could you give me an example or two of, what management innovations you've developed that would make it attractive for BPO innovators and so forth?
Of course. At this point, if you don't mind, I would also like Andrea to assist me because she has been in direct relation with some of the most important companies in Costa Rica. And I think that probably she can give you an example very, very relevant in the okay.
Yeah, hi.
Can you, Andrea, we could use the mic here.
Come here, come
Okay.
here,
Yeah, this way.
come here. Un par de ejemplos recientes.
Good morning. Yes, we have operating in Costa Rica Procter Gamble. They have around 1,200 people. We have also Western Union right there. HP has part of their operation in BPO as well. So we have around 45 companies, leader of the industry, performing processes of back offices, insured services, HR, payroll, accounting, ITO, supporting certain process of providing to the markets in America. So really we have a big group of companies performing a high level operations in sophistication and innovation processes in the country.
Okay, good question. Another thought or comment? Out back there.
At the back.
Madam President, thank you very much for your comments this morning. Very inspiring. I think I speak for everyone in the room when we say that as our country makes its choice this year, we hope that our country makes the choice for leadership that represents what you represent to your country. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having gone to Costa Rica and having climbed our highest mountain there. Thank you so much.
Went through the cloud forests, and we'll be talking about cloud computing associated with those cloud forests very soon. My question is, your country is inspirational to a lot of folks as individuals, but in Central America in particular, I wanted to ask you, to what extent do you find other leaders in other Central American countries looking to you and Costa Rica as a model? How do you help influence the other countries in Central America to represent what you've done for your citizens?
Well, no, thank you for the question and, of course, for the comments. We do not pretend other nations to follow our development path. We understand that every nation has its own history, and so it is very hard to pretend, to implement the same kind of institution, the same. But what is probably important is the values and the principles. And I think that when you analyze our region, Central America, we have experienced a very positive evolution during the last 5 decades. Let me just remember you that only 15, 20 years ago, we didn't have in most of the Central American nations democracies. Those were nations that were ruling by the armies. They were going through constantly coup d'etat or changing the governments. They were not respecting the human rights. Human rights violation was something very constantly. They didn't have a free press and so on. So when you analyze in terms of the principles, the values, I mean, the rule of law, democracy, human rights, freedom of expression, there is a very positive evolution in Central America. So I think they are trying to improve their institutions according to those principles. Unfortunately, when they were trying to leave behind the problems of the years of war, the organized crime appeared and is creating a lot of challenges to those nations. But in general terms, I will say they are moving ahead instead of going back.
Okay, and one final question. What's it like to be a former president? What's life like now? You were so ambitious to become the president. Now, where do your ambitions lie?
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Kirk, for that question. Let me tell you that when I was preparing myself to leave office, I asked to some of my colleagues, how's life after being president? And I have to confess, I won't give you the names, but I have to confess that most of them told me there is no life after being a president. But for me, it has been all the contrary, because probably, I don't know if it has to do with being a woman, but for us, family is very, 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 very important. And so I am enjoying my family again. But also, I didn't let behind my experience as president. I am using that experience to bring some kind of, lessons about how politics is about. I'm working mostly with universities, with young people. And so I am feeling very, very comfortable, very happy about what I am doing, discussing with many young people about the future of politics, the future of democracy, the challenges of democratic governance in Latin America, the future about the relationship with between the United States and Latin America. So I am really enjoying it. And also participating in some kind of different global initiatives on the global agenda. And finally, I have now the opportunity to share with you in such kind of, relaxed matter. So I'm truly enjoying every moment after I left the presidency.
Thank you, thank you. And I just want to say on behalf of our organization, and I'm sure the people here today, we're really, really honored. You're very candid and honest, and I know you're a very busy person, but clearly you care about this industry, and we thank you so much.
No, I am the one who have to thank you, those who have already been in Costa Rica, who have operations in my country. Thank you so much for having decided to be with us, to be part of our family. And for those who haven't decided, please go there. You will have a wonderful time. And also, you will have a very successful operations in Costa Rica. So thank you again, Kirk, for this opportunity.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Well done. Well done. Thank you.